She didn't buy the airfield for the land. She just wanted the hangar big enough for her tools, private enough to be left alone. But the real story didn't start until the weeds shifted near the back wall, revealing a rusted door no one had opened in 50 years. What she found behind it turned wrenches into wealth and secrets into something much more dangerous. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. And if stories like this stir something in you, the kind where old places whisper and the past refuses to stay buried, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's episode might just make this one look tame. It didn't feel like a smart decision. It felt like a breakdown. Samantha Keller stood outside the county courthouse with a folded deed, a duffel bag full of tools, and the keys to a patch of cracked asphalt 2 miles past the last traffic light in town. Her late father's garage, Keller Auto, the one with the peeling hand-painted sign and grease-stained floors she grew up on, was gone. Sold. Paperwork signed in the same stiff, quiet room where her dad had once paid taxes in cash because he didn't trust banks. She hadn't told anyone what she planned to do with the money, not her friends. Not the guy she sometimes texted at 2 a.m. when the silence got too heavy. Not even her brother, who'd left town years ago and only called when it was someone's birthday. She drove out to the airfield with the windows down and the radio off. It used to belong to the government, or maybe a freight company's stories changed depending on who you asked. What didn't change was this. Nobody had flown out of there in decades. It was 43 acres of weeds, rust, and mystery. And to Samantha, it was perfect. No neighbors, no cameras, no HOA telling her she couldn't keep engine blocks in the yard. Just quiet. She parked outside the largest hangar, Hangar C, and stood for a long time, staring at the curve of its rusted arch like it was daring her to come closer. A hawk circled overhead, and the wind stirred grass tall enough to hide snakes, or worse. The lock on the hangar door was already snapped off, hanging by a single screw like someone had tried to break in years ago and gave up. She pushed it open with her shoulder. It moaned, like a dying whale. Inside, the light shifted through broken roof panels, dancing across the cracked floor in gold and blue stripes. Her boots echoed. The air smelled like dust, burnt metal, and something older like mold and gasoline had raised a family in the corners. She walked the perimeter, mentally mapping the space. It could fit 6 cars, easy. Maybe 10 with lifts. It wasn't just a place to work. It was a place to disappear. That first night, she slept on an air mattress in the office above the hangar, woke to birds screaming in the rafters and a sunbeam cutting through the grime like a blade. By the 3rd night, she'd cleared a path to the back wall, the part nearly swallowed by overgrown brush and a crumbling retaining wall. She was moving a rusted oil drum when she noticed it. A square edge in the weeds. Concrete, too even to be natural. She kicked at it, then crouched. There, hidden beneath moss and vines, was a metal door half sunk into the earth. It didn't have a handle, just a keyhole, the size of a quarter. She stared at it for a long time, then whispered to no one. What the hell did I just buy? The door haunted her for 3 days. She didn't touch it, didn't tell anyone, just worked around it, like it wasn't there. The hangar needed power, and she focused on that, patching old fuse boxes, tracing brittle wiring, firing up a generator she'd dragged from the garage before selling it. But every time she walked past that far wall, her eyes drifted to the bunker door. It wasn't just the shape of it, rectangular, rusted and heavy. It was how the ground seemed to lean away from it, how the vines grew thicker on that side, as if nature had been trying to hide it for decades. On the 4th morning, she brought out her drill and a crowbar. She didn't have a key, but the lock plate was corroded, and she figured with the right leverage, she could pop the hinges. She got 1 bolt out before the drill bit snapped. Then another bolt sheared clean off. It was like the door didn't want to open, like it had been designed to resist not just time, but intention. She sat back on her heels, sweat running down her spine. It was mid-September, but the air felt hotter underground. Back inside the hangar, she took inventory of what she had. A lathe, a MIG welder, hand tools, a breaker bar that could take down a tree. But she knew enough about concrete and steel to guess the truth. If this was a proper bunker, she wouldn't break in without explosives. That night, she lay on her mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling above her. The silence was different out here. No cars, no humming streetlights, just wind pushing through broken windows and the distant groan of something settling beneath the concrete. At midnight, she got up. Something in her chest wouldn't let her sleep. She padded barefoot across the hangar floor, flashlight in one hand, wrench in the other, like it might protect her. She stood in front of the bunker door again. The metal was cold, even in the summer heat. She ran her fingers over the edge. The rust flaked, but not enough to weaken it. She pressed her ear to the steel and heard nothing. But that kind of nothing that's too complete. No echo, no insects. Like the space behind the door didn't exist. The next morning, she tore apart the office upstairs, a dusty room with half a desk, a filing cabinet full of empty folders, and a rotting bookshelf. The floor creaked when she moved, the kind of creak that made her stop and listen. And on the second pass, she noticed it one floorboard different from the others. Newer wood, no dust. She pried it up with a screwdriver. Underneath was a narrow metal box, latched shut. It wasn't locked. Inside was one item, a key. Large, round, heavy. It looked like it belonged in a submarine or a movie. Her pulse quickened. She ran downstairs, crouched at the bunker door, and slid the key in. It didn't fit at first. She turned it anyway. It resisted, then gave. The click was so loud it echoed through the hangar. The door hissed as it cracked open, air rushing out like something had been holding its breath for decades. The first thing she saw inside was a ladder. The second was darkness. She stood at the threshold for a long time, 1 foot inside, 1 foot out. The air that rose from the hole wasn't musty like she expected. It was colder. Still. It smelled like copper, and dust like an old coin kept in a locked drawer. Samantha flicked on her flashlight and pointed it down. The ladder descended maybe 15 feet before disappearing into blackness. The rungs looked solid, bolted to the wall, but who knew how long they'd been waiting? She tested the first one. It groaned but held. The light shook in her hand as she climbed. Each step echoed. The deeper she went, the more the world above felt like it didn't exist anymore, just heat and rust, and the sound of her boots finding ground. When she reached the bottom, the flashlight swept across concrete walls. The space was tight, more hallway than room, and sealed on either end by thick metal doors. She turned slowly, shining the beam across decades of silence. The first door had no label, just rivets and a handle that had long since fused into place. But the second door, the one at the far end of the corridor, was different. It had been welded shut from the outside. Heavy steel bars ran across it, and someone had spray-painted a warning in white block letters. Do not open. The letters were faded, but something about them still felt fresh, not in paint, but in meaning. It didn't feel like an old warning. It felt like a plea. She stepped closer. Her fingers brushed the edge of the bars. They'd been sealed with thick welds, industrial grade. Whoever had done it didn't want anyone going in. She circled back to the first door. It had a keypad. Old, analog, not digital. And above it, faintly etched into the metal, was a name, M. Beck. The name tugged at something in her memory. Not from real life, but from late-night YouTube rabbit holes and old conspiracy forums she used to scroll through while eating gas station burritos. She pulled out her phone, typed it in, and there it was. Dr. Michael Beck, 1970, 1, lead, engineer on a black-budget project called Vault Signal, last seen in 1987. Vanished without a trace. Her flashlight flickered. She slapped it once, hard, and the beam steadied. When she turned back toward the hallway, she saw something she hadn't before. A plaque, buried in shadow. She wiped it clean with her sleeve. The engraving was simple. Unit 7. B. Defense Research, divided by deep storage, authorized personnel, only. Samantha's breath caught in her throat. Defense. Storage. Hidden under an airfield. No one had touched in years. It didn't take much to guess what this place used to be. And maybe still was. She climbed back up the ladder, heart pounding, and locked the bunker behind her. That night, she lay awake, listening to the hum of the generator, thinking about the man who'd vanished, the door that had been welded shut, and the key she found buried beneath a floorboard no one had walked on in years. She didn't know it yet, but she wasn't alone down there. Something had been waiting, and now that the door was open, it had started to stir. She returned the next morning with gloves, a headlamp, and a crowbar. The sun hadn't fully risen, but Samantha couldn't wait. Curiosity had swallowed fear. She descended the ladder slowly, one rung at a time, her boots thudding softly into the silence. The hallway greeted her like before cold, dead air pressing against her skin. She moved straight to the first door, the one with the keypad. It had no power, but she noticed a narrow seam along the wall, nearby a maintenance panel. She pried it open and found wires, old but intact. It looked like the place had been built for resilience, maybe even survival. She made a mental note to bring down her voltmeter. For now, she turned back to the welded door. The paint over the warning looked aged, but there were small holes, fist-sized dents scattered near the hinges, like someone had tried to break it open from the inside. Or maybe keep something else from getting out. Her light swept the floor. Dust everywhere, except in one corner, where a faint set of boot prints led to a control panel sealed behind a broken glass cover. She crouched and studied the buttons. One label was still visible. Int. Room divided by archive. Her fingers hovered over it. She didn't press it. Not yet. Instead, she returned to the surface, gathered tools, and came back with a toolbox slung over one shoulder and an extension cable trailing behind her like a lifeline. She fed it down the ladder, connected it to the panel she'd found earlier. The lights flickered, and for the first time, the corridor beneath the airfield glowed. Faint, pale, but alive. Inside the first room, through the now unlocked door, she found blueprints. Dozens of them, rolled tightly in sealed tubes, stacked on steel shelving units that hadn't seen a human hand in decades. She unrolled the first one on a metal table. It was a design, something aerodynamic. Too small for a plane, too complex for a drone. Notes in the margins referred to inversion fields and thermal recoil dampening. The second blueprint showed something else entirely. A schematic for what looked like a generator, but not like any generator she'd ever seen. Its components were circular, concentric rings woven around what appeared to be a levitating core, handwritten across the top. Prometheus, Model C, 3. Samantha's heart thumped louder with each turn of the page. This wasn't scrap. This was invention. Theory turned machine. And these weren't just experiments, they were nearly completed. She moved deeper into the room and found the walls covered in photos, black and white, some Polaroid, some faded blue from old printer ink. One showed a man with wire-rimmed glasses crouched beside the device from the blueprint. In every photo, he wore the same lab coat, the same slight frown. The name tag read, Beck, M. Bullet holes pocked the back wall. Samantha's breath caught. A chair lay tipped on its side. The tile beneath was cracked, stained with something too dark to be rust. There had been violence here, not imagined, not storybook. Real. Fast. Covered up. She stumbled backward, knocking over a crate that spilled its contents across the floor: files, clippings, military memos stamped redacted, and a yellowed envelope addressed simply, "To whomever finds this." She didn't open it. Not yet. Because just then, the power flickered. And far behind her, somewhere near the sealed door, something made a sound. A single, hollow knock. Samantha didn't sleep that night. She sat upstairs in the old hangar office, the envelope on the desk in front of her, unopened. The knock still echoed in her head, not loud, but unmistakable. Metal on metal. One strike. Like someone testing to see if the door still held. She turned the envelope over in her hands. It was brittle, edges curled from age. The flap was sealed with a smear of wax, the kind that had long since lost its color. She took a breath, then broke it open. The letter inside was handwritten, dense, slanted script, like it had been scribbled fast. The opening line hit like a gut punch. "If you're reading this, I'm probably dead." The letter didn't waste time. The writer, presumably Dr. Beck, explained the project in fragmented details. A generator that could run without fuel, a power source that bent the laws of thermal decay. A revolution in quiet energy, he called it. The military wanted to weaponize it. Of course they did. The project was shut down after an incident, the kind no one survived, and no one documented. Beck locked the doors, welded the dangerous pieces inside, and vanished. The letter ended with one final sentence. "If you choose to continue my work, do it for the right reasons. If you choose to sell it, at least get what it's worth." She stared at those words long after the rest of the ink blurred. Then she looked around the room. Blueprints. Prototypes. Forgotten inventions designed by a man who disappeared into myth. The next morning, she snapped photos. Not of everything, just the clean stuff. A close-up of the Prometheus C-3 schematic. The coil housing. The levitation chamber. She blurred the annotations, hid the names. Then she posted them to a small, obscure forum for fringe engineers and ex-military tech heads. She didn't use her real name, just a throwaway handle, FireGhost22. The post was vague, curious, hypothetical about a lost energy device and whether anything like it had ever been recovered or patented. She expected silence, or ridicule. What she got were DMs, dozens. One user asked to buy the blueprint. Another offered $10,000 just for clearer photos. Then came the heavy hitters' anonymous accounts offering six figures. One said they represented a private energy firm in Dubai. Another claimed to be ex-NSA, asking if the device hums when activated. Samantha sat back in her chair, her heart racing. It was the kind of money people joked about. Life-changing, ghost story money, the kind you laughed at until it landed in your lap. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she cleared a spot in the center of the hangar and carefully laid out the C-3 components. Not all of them were present, but enough to guess how it might be assembled. She didn't understand everything. Not yet, but she recognized balance, precision, genius. That night, she chose one buyer. A woman who claimed she could wire $500,000 in crypto for physical delivery of one clean prototype. They'd meet in a city 3 states away. No names, no questions. Samantha sealed the deal. She slept with one eye open, and for the first time she realized this wasn't just a project anymore. It was a gate, and she'd just stepped through it. The meeting was set for a Wednesday afternoon in a half-abandoned warehouse district outside Street. Louis. Samantha left the airfield at dawn, the prototype locked inside a steel case lined with foam and paranoia. She wore gloves, sunglasses. Not because she needed to, but because everything about this trade made her feel like she'd stepped out of her own life and into someone else's spy novel. The drive was quiet, but her thoughts weren't. She kept running through the steps. Park close to the exit. Don't use real names. Accept payment only after visual confirmation. She'd hidden a burner phone in the car and a note on her laptop back at the hangar just in case. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. Not that she had anyone left to tell. The warehouse was exactly as described. Windowless. Dead quiet. The kind of place you could scream in and no one would come. She arrived early, parked under a flickering security light, and waited. Right on time, a black SUV pulled in. No plates. No hesitation. A man stepped out. He wasn't the woman she'd been messaging. Mid-50 seconds. Cropped hair. Tactical boots. Leather jacket. Ex-military, she guessed. The kind that still walked like they had a sidearm tucked somewhere. He didn't offer a name. Just looked her up and down, then nodded toward the case. You bring it? Samantha hesitated, then popped the trunk and opened the container. The prototype sat gleaming under the warehouse. Lights. copper rings, polished core, and the strange dark crystal in the center that she still didn't fully understand. The man whistled low. "Well, I'll be damned." He circled it like a mechanic checking for body damage. Then instead of talking payment, he pulled a small flashlight from his jacket and scanned the bottom of the device. She tensed. "That wasn't part of the deal. What are you looking for?" she asked. "Just checking something." He stood. "This one doesn't have the access plate." "That's good. Means it's stable." Stable. The word stuck in her ears. He looked at her, squinting. "You opened the red file yet?" Her stomach turned cold. She didn't answer. He continued. "Because if you had, you'd know this isn't just a battery. This is classified tech. The kind they buried with entire facilities. You sure you want to sell this?" She stared at him, trying to read behind the calm voice. "Are you with the government?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Not anymore. But trust me, they're still watching. Someone always is." He handed her a thumb drive. "Payment instructions. Crypto, cold wallet, split across 5 accounts. Once I confirm delivery, the rest will be wired." Samantha nodded, barely. Her hands were sweating. She felt like she'd just stepped off solid ground into fog. The man closed the case and loaded it into his SUV. Before climbing in, he paused. "Last piece of advice," he said. "If you find the second schematic, the one for Prometheus D, don't post it. Burn it." Then he drove away, taillights vanishing into the gloom like a warning shot. Samantha stood there for a long time, listening to the silence, the wind, the emptiness. Her phone buzzed. The crypto had arrived. She was rich. But for the first time in weeks, she felt truly afraid. She didn't sleep when she got back. Couldn't. The hangar felt different, not just empty, but watched. Shadows stretched longer than they should have. The silence was too clean. She kept checking the power switches, her motion sensors, even the sky, just in case. Paranoia had a pulse now, and it was pounding. The next morning, she opened the red file. It had been sitting in the archive room ever since she found it, sealed in wax and wrapped in a brittle leather string. Part of her didn't want to break it. But part of her knew it was time. The warning from the buyer, the second schematic, Prometheus D, it echoed louder now, and her fingers were already moving before she could second-guess herself. Inside the folder were 2 things. A typed letter marked confidential, eyes only, and a set of blueprints rolled tight and held with a blood-red ribbon. She read the letter first. It started clinical military tone, full of acronyms and redactions. Something called Project. Prometheus had moved through 4 phases between 1979 and 1985. Phase A was theoretical. Phase B involved small-scale models. Phase C, the one she'd already sold, was a limited energy coil designed for non-fuel power generation. But Phase D? Phase D was different. The letter warned of anomalies during testing, unexplained power spikes, biological effects. One engineer reported hearing voices after prolonged exposure. Another went blind for 12 hours. Animals in the testing area died, not from radiation, not from heat, but from massive neural overload. The final paragraph chilled her. Project Prometheus was not abandoned due to budget or failure. It was buried because its success threatened the integrity of our understanding of energy, space, and biological response to synthetic resonance. Schematics for Phase D must not be recovered. Samantha's hands shook as she unrolled the second blueprint. It was larger than the others, older, too. The ink bled at the edges like it had been drawn in haste. At the center was a shape she couldn't describe. Not circular, not square, something fractal. It looked like it had been sketched over 100 times, each version more distorted than the last. One note in the margin read, "If resonance exceeds 33 hertzes, seal the chamber." Another just said, "Don't stay in the room alone." She sat back on the cold floor, the paper spread across her lap, and tried to breathe. This wasn't some underground tinker project. This was something big, bigger than her, bigger than the bunker, and someone had welded the door shut for a reason. She packed the schematic away, wrapped it tight in plastic, and buried it beneath the office floorboards where she'd found the key. If anyone came looking, she didn't want it in sight. She even removed the archive room's power source, blacked it out again. But that night, while brushing her teeth at the old sink in the hangar corner, she noticed something new. A light. Faint. Red. Blinking from the far end of the field. When she stepped outside, it disappeared. But the dirt beneath her boots still held fresh tire tracks. She wasn't the only one who knew about the bunker anymore. Samantha didn't leave the hangar the next day. She didn't trust her truck. Didn't trust the road. Something had shifted not in the wind or the machines, but in the air itself. It felt heavy, expectant, like the world was holding its breath. She tried to focus, ran diagnostics on the leftover components in the archive, sketched out wiring diagrams, even swept the floors twice. Anything to stay busy. But her eyes kept drifting toward the old staircase leading to the bunker. At noon, the power cut out. No flicker. No warning. 1 second she was soldering a circuit under the desk lamp. The next, she was sitting in silence. Her own breath the loudest sound in the room. The generator outside hadn't failed. It was still humming. But every light inside had gone dead. She stepped outside. The sun was high. No storm. No reason. She crossed the gravel to the breaker panel and froze. It had been opened. Not blown off. Not rusted out. Just opened. The bolts lay neatly on the ground, like someone had unscrewed it with care. She backed up, heart thumping, eyes scanning the fence line. No movement, no sound. But someone had been there. She didn't call the cops. What would she even say? "Hi, I've got a Cold War-era experimental device in my hangar, and someone might be spying on me?" No, this wasn't police territory. This was something else. She stayed up that night with a flashlight duct taped to a crowbar. Didn't sleep, didn't change clothes. Just paced the hangar floor and watched the shadows stretch and shrink against the walls. At 3:17 a.m., her backup cell pinged the one no one had the number to. Unknown sender. One message. "You have something that doesn't belong to you." She didn't respond. Just stared at the screen until the text burned into her retinas. At 3:38 a.m., the power came back. By itself. No clicks, no sparks. Just a sudden return to normal, like the building had never gone dark. She checked every inch of the hangar at sunrise. Found one thing out of place. A single screw missing from the access panel to the Prometheus housing. Not gone, just loosened. Enough to send a message. That evening, she debated her next move. Sell the rest? Bury it? Burn the damn place down? But her gut wouldn't let her run. There was something about the tech, about the schematic, the hum, the subtle charge in the air when she stood too close, that told her this wasn't just a threat. It was a turning point. So she opened the case again. Studied the core, the crystal, the coils. She plugged it in with trembling fingers and flipped the switch. It didn't glow. It pulsed. A slow, quiet beat. Like a heartbeat in reverse. Not something alive, but something waking up. She stepped back and watched. The floor beneath it vibrated. The ceiling lights flickered. The air smelled faintly of ozone and iron and something else. Something ancient. Then the laptop beside it lit up on its own. The screen turned blue. A login prompt blinked once. Then a phrase appeared on the bottom corner. Prometheus core sync ping received. Someone out there was listening. And now, they knew it was online. She never meant to auction it. That was never the plan. But after the core synced and the screen lit up, she realized she had one card left to play, the one nobody else in the world had. A working prototype. Not just the blueprints, not theory. Proof. She posted anonymously. Just one photo. The core pulsing with the word online, faintly glowing across the screen beside it. No explanation, no name, just a cryptic title. Phase D, final unit, operational. And then she logged off. Went for a walk around the field just to breathe, just to feel normal again. When she returned an hour later, the listing had offers. 3 of them over $1 million. One, at $2.4 million. By midnight, the highest bid sat at $3.6 million. She watched the numbers rise from the upstairs office, the cigar box full of leftover parts beside her, and wondered how her life had collapsed and rebuilt itself in 37 days. The airfield had gone from forgotten to hunted, the bunker from curiosity to obsession. At 12:04 a.m., the auction closed. The final buyer had wired the crypto. She was officially a millionaire. She just sat there in silence, no celebration, no smile. Just the weight of it, like a final bolt, clicking into place. And then, at 12:11 a.m., the headlights came. 2 vehicles, no plates, blacked-out windows, fast, silent. They rolled across the gravel with precision that didn't feel civilian. Samantha watched from above, breath held, heart pounding so hard she felt it in her teeth. She didn't wait to see who stepped out. She grabbed her go-bag from under the desk, shoved the flash drive with the schematics inside, and bolted. The old truck coughed twice before it started. She didn't turn the headlights on, just reversed into the darkness, cutting across the field, tall grass scraping the windows. She saw flashlights moving through the hangar just as she reached the fence line. One of them looked up, froze, then pointed. She floored it. The truck jumped the ditch with a sound that cracked the axle and made her teeth rattle. But she didn't stop, didn't look back. The sound of her breath was the only thing louder than the engine. She drove until dawn. No destination, just away, dirt roads, back highways. A gas station bathroom where she changed clothes and dumped her phone into a dumpster behind a Denny's. She found a motel an hour from the state line. Paid cash. Double-locked the door. Slept with the flash drive under her pillow. When she woke up, she had 20 messages on the burner phone. None of them friendly. She was rich. She was hunted. And she was alone. But the strange thing? She wasn't scared. Not in the way you'd think. She was clearer than she'd ever been, because now she knew what it felt like to hold power no one else understood, and how fast the world would try to bury you for it. The airfield sat quiet for months. The grass grew back. Weeds swallowed the tire tracks. Locals said it had sold, but no one ever saw a for sale sign. The hangar lights never came back on, at least not to anyone who knew how to look. Then, one day, a girl named Riley Hart showed up with a used trailer and a dream too big for the town she came from. She was 26, just out of a dead-end job, and carrying a toolbox with her dad's initials scratched into the handle. She'd bought the place dirt cheap, auctioned by the county, after the last owner disappeared. No record, no contact, just vanished. The hangar was locked when she got there, but the key had been left in a small metal box by the door. No note. Just the key, and a wrench wrapped in an oil-stained rag. Inside, the place was mostly empty. No cars, no lifts, no machines. Just dust, silence, and something else, a feeling, like the walls had seen more than they were ready to share. She found it 2 days later. In the upstairs office, hidden behind a loose panel near the desk, a flash drive, labeled in faded ink. Finish it. There was no context, no instructions. But when she plugged it in, her laptop lit up with files, schematics, blueprints, test notes, all signed with a name she didn't recognize, SK. At first, she thought it was some failed startup project. But then she saw the photos, images of a device glowing faintly, notes about resonance, about energy loops and vibration frequencies that didn't follow known physics. And in the last folder, a single video file. The woman on the screen looked tired, focused, worn down, but clear-eyed. She sat in the same office Riley now stood in. "My name's Samantha Keller," the woman said, voice low but steady. "If you're seeing this, it means I couldn't stay. Maybe you'll finish what I started, or maybe you'll know better than I did." There was a pause. Then a faint smile. "Either way, don't let them find you." The video ended. Riley stared at the screen for a long time, then walked outside, into the wind, and looked out at the field. The earth was quiet. The bunker still sealed. But the air felt charged, like something underneath had stirred and gone back to sleep. She didn't run. Not yet. She was a mechanic. She believed in fixing things. She picked up the wrench, turned it over in her hand, and felt its weight, heavy, familiar, like it had already been passed down through fire. And somewhere deep beneath the hangar, beyond rusted doors, forgotten blueprints, and sealed vaults, the pulse of something impossible kept beating. Not loud, not fast. Just enough to say, "You're next."